Happy birthday, America. It's July 4th, 2017. And I'm some dick on the line talking about stuff. A little bit about me. Kind of a nerd, kind of a geek. This is my first YouTube video. I thought about doing some kind of YouTube videos for a long time. Thought maybe I'd talk about Star Wars movies or superhero movies because I'm, like I say, kind of a geek. It's the kind of stuff I like. But I also like history. And I also like America. I consider myself to be a patriot. And so as I sit here on July 4th, I want to instead talk about something that's really starting to wear on me. And that is the destruction, I guess, of the Fourth Estate. That is this constant beriling of the press. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the press has its problems. They are biased. But it's not biased in the way that everybody claims that it is. It's biased toward sensationalism, right? Toward drama, toward ratings. So you'll often get people that come on and argue back and forth, not so much on policy anymore, but it's getting more and more where they're arguing about the basic facts of reality. And because the Fourth Estate, the media, especially the 24-hour news stations, they want ratings, so they don't really want to solve these problems per se, so much as just have people argue. And that is a real bias. I think it keeps people from really figuring out what's going on. If you have two people on and give them the same amount of airtime and don't really call people out on their bullshit, then it does get hard for people at home to know who's telling the truth out there. And that's part of what I want to talk about. The White House, our current White House, has had coming from their official responses to the president's tweeting, which actually is an official response, as they've said, right? That's an official statement by the White House. And he tweets things and they say things and defend positions that are just demonstrably false. Whether we're talking about crowd size, which, wasn't a big deal, talking about crowd size. Donald Trump was always a hypester, so of course the crowds are bigger than they really are. That's one thing. But going on, continuing on that to the idea that, millions and millions of illegals voted, which has now turned into a reason, an excuse for him to collect voter data on the whole country. That's a little more frightening, don't you think? Especially because the basis for it was nothing, was garbage, was something he made up. You got a lot of media that has a particular agenda. Whether it's Fox News, definitely has an agenda. Their agenda is a conservative agenda, which in and of itself shouldn't be a problem until you get into the idea that they don't really promote facts. They tell you the facts, but then they kind of set it up as an argument against them. They take things out of context to try and create these arguments that don't really make sense if you look at them objectively. So I do have a problem with that. You have other conservative media that continues down that path even further. The Alex Joneses of the world, who say things that are just false, pick up false stories to run with them. Whether you're talking about claiming that Sandy Hook is false, which is just a horrid thing to do. But to say that it's some kind of liberal conspiracy, to get people scared for whatever reason, I don't even understand how that kind of stuff can continue. And you constantly have this president calling legitimate news organizations fake news. And that's really what I want to get into, I guess, for just a minute. Like I say, there is a bias. That bias is toward sensationalism. I do feel that there's more that they could do to make sure that correct information is disseminated to people. But that's not the same thing, really, as fake news. as misreporting factual information, especially with the purpose to disseminate disinformation. Right? That's what fake news means. It means to not just to create a false story, but also to promote that story to disseminate false information. And whatever the problems with the mainstream media are, it's not that. The New York Times, the Washington Post, the New York Post, CNN, they have these long-running reputations that they've earned through truthful reporting. You don't necessarily have to like what they say, and there's definitely the editorial pieces, which are opinion portions of whether the newspaper or the show, which are not exactly just factual news, but kind of an analysis of it that does skew to one opinion or another. But we've had a different thing going on. It's actually denying the facts and actually saying that people who pride themselves on getting the facts right are somehow the problem. You have a lot of people that believe the lies that come out of the White House, that actually believe that Russia had nothing to do with, did not interfere in our election, and that 3 million people did probably illegally vote, and things of that nature. And that's really frightening. The important thing, I guess, that I want to say on this, the important thing to remember is that when you're trying to delegitimize the truth, trying to delegitimize the facts, and you're a liar, right? You're telling lies to delegitimize the truth. You don't actually have to get people to believe you. That's not the goal. Because just as good as that is having people call into question the truth. Because if people call into question the truth and don't know who to believe, then that makes them sit out. That makes them not participate. That makes them not want to hear the arguments anymore. And if they sit out, that's just as good as signing up on your side. If you can, or at least it's half as good, right? I mean, if you can't get them to vote for you, at least you can get them to not vote for the other guy, and then that's still half a vote for you, basically. And if you're doing that the way that has been going on, by constantly calling out, by constantly saying things that are not true and calling into question what is true, then you end up with a lot of people that don't know what the fuck is going on. And I guess that's the real big problem. Is that it muddies the waters so much that nobody can see what's really going on. It's something to worry about. I've often wondered how a fascist party can show up in a country, right? How do people allow themselves to fall under that kind of rule, especially if as a democracy, right? I grew up in America, so I look around and I wonder, how did that even come to pass? How does that thing happen? But as I sit here and I watch as our president says things that are, again, demonstrably false, lies. Our president gets up and lies about things, from simple things to really complex things. And that in and of itself would be bad. But then he sends out White House staff. Okay, well, they work for him, so that makes sense. But then you have so many Republicans that either don't want to comment on it, or will back him up, or, just will stay out of it and allow it to continue to go unchallenged. And what really bothers me about that is this is the party that has always claimed a moral authority, that character matters, that honesty matters. And if character and honesty matter, then where the hell are you? That has really come to bother me lately, more than anything else, is the amount of people that are sitting there watching this and enabling this sort of thing to happen. Don't get me wrong, there's a handful of Republicans that have come out and called him on his bullshit. That's really what I'm looking for and in other politicians. I want you to call people out on their bullshit. That's what I want out of the news. I want the news to call people out on their bullshit. I think they need to do it a little more. I don't think they do it enough. That's kind of what I guess I want to do here. Because there's a lot of bullshit out there. I'm going to try and just choose a topic and talk about it. As I continue on with this, I do want to try and answer questions. So if somebody leaves a comment, that's beyond just, I hate you, you're some piece of shit or whatever, that's fine. That happens. I don't care about that, I guess. But if you actually ask a real question, I will try and answer it. I want to have a real discussion. I'm a fan of rational discussion. But I'm going to probably continue to do this. I'm going to continue to put up different videos on different topics. I'll probably address this topic again because this one is particularly important, this destroying of the Fourth Estate, this dissemination of false and misinformation, the coalition of people that have either decided to continue to support him because of the Faustian deal they made, that he would be able to maybe get their policies through, and so it's okay that, in the process he's making a mockery of the office that he's in, or that he's ignorant, seems completely ignorant of foreign policy. I'll be honest, even George W. Bush, who got a lot of flack, as everybody knows, for not being exactly the smartest tool in the shed, as they say. But even him, I felt, knew what the hell was going on, knew a bit of the history about it. And what he didn't know, I was confident he was, informing himself on in the moment, and that he had the best interest of the country in mind. And it really frightens me that I feel like I'm living in a time, watching in real time, as that's not what's going on currently. I actually feel like I probably know more about the history of the world and foreign policy than the guy in office, and that's kind of frightening to me. And don't get me wrong, I don't consider myself a slouch. Like I say, I've been a fan of history my whole life. It's something I've always been interested in. But it frightens me to think that the guy who currently has the job knows so little, and that he seems more concerned about his own personal affairs, whether it's his businesses, whether it's his image. He seems more interested in that kind of shit than he does running the country. He seems more interested in his personal holdings than he does the American people. And so that really kind of bothers me. I'm going to wrap this up now because, again, I don't want these things to be really long. I don't really want them to be hate speech or any kind of, just yelling into the monitor. That's not what I want to do here. I do hope, people listen and we can start a conversation. That would be my ultimate dream. But who knows? Who knows where it's going to go? Because, again, this is my first one. So we'll see what happens. In the meantime, I'm Son Dick Online. This is my opinion.